Chapter 1. You are listening at FameTV.info. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios at Eichel Prison in Eric State. A prison guard slowly opened a large iron door locked with a huge lock and shouted at a handsome young man in the cell. Hearing this lifeless voice, the handsome young man slowly stood up and shook off the dust on his body. The prison guard told the young man that today was the day he would be released from prison. The young man nodded insipidly, indicating that he understood. Not long after, a young man with tattered clothes stood outside the high wall of the prison, his head lowered. John looked at the prison behind him, his eyes squinted, with a thoughtful look on his face. It's been 3 years. John thought about what had happened in the past 3 years. His face was calm, but there was a cold look on it. His palm unknowingly clenched into a fist. Drops of blood flowed down from his palm, but he didn't feel the pain. Being an orphan since he was young, he had grown up together with his girlfriend Alice, whom he had known since he was young. Their relationship was also very good. 3 years ago, John was a hardworking young man. After working hard, he finally became the manager of a small local business. His income was not bad, enough for the two of them to lead a good life. Alice also had a stable job. She worked at a car sales company in Eric State. The treatment and benefits there were also very good and stable. Such conditions were very satisfactory for John and Alice, who had both grown up in an orphanage. However, the good days weren't long. They were going to step into a proper life, but the events that followed destroyed all of this, and the good days were gone forever. Nightmare descended. John's breathing became hurried, his expression was ferocious and terrifying. Images from 3 years ago flashed before his eyes like a revolving lantern. Cars drove past on the silent and noisy asphalt road as they were walking. A roaring black sports car was speeding along the road. His body was pushed away. A bloody light flashed before his eyes, screams, shouts of panic. Immediately after, there was a loud crash. John's expression became twisted, and his body was trembling uncontrollably. In the nick of time, he, who wasn't able to react in time, was pushed away by his girlfriend Alice. But Alice was hit head on. The person who knocked them down was the young master of Eric State's Alexander Corporation, Neil. A sense of powerlessness welled up in his heart, flooding his nerves like a nightmare. This feeling made him collapse to the ground. Looking at the scene in front of him, his originally beautiful life instantly felt like it was about to collapse. He felt so weak and powerless. Dr. Allen. How is Alice? Can she still wake up? Yes, everything will get better. I understand. Thank you, Dr. Allen. John, let it go. Let's not fight against them. That's right, we are unable to win against them. The person who knocked the two of you is the young master of Alexander Corporation, Neil. You should be aware that Alice is seriously ill right now and needs massive funds for treatment. Even though you're a small manager, how long can your savings last? You can't even imagine the power of that kind of capital corporation. We can't beat them, there's no way we can beat them. Standing in front of the prison door, John's face was filled with anger. He continued to recall the events from 3 years ago. The enmity between John and Neil was immense, and he kept refusing to sign a settlement agreement with Neil. He wanted Neil to pay the price. He definitely must pay. John had tried to use his network of connections, tried to use his meager power to make Neil pay for his deed. However, with his meager power, how could he be a match for the young master of Alexander Corporation? He didn't manage to make Neil pay. Instead, Neil had set him up and sent him to prison. Neil had used the power of his corporation to bribe the boss of John's company to cooperate with him in setting John up. At that time, the company was organizing a team building event, and John's boss kept making John drink. Then, John's boss drugged him when he drank too much. He then sent a woman into the hotel room which John was in and stripped John naked. The next day, John was sued by that woman and was sentenced to 3 years in prison for attempted rape. Who? John took a deep breath. He looked up at the sky and repeatedly advised himself not to let his imagination run wild. He then quickly walked forward and stopped in front of a bus stop. There were very few people at the shabby bus stop. John stood motionlessly in front of the bus stop, waiting for the bus to arrive. Time flew by and a bus slowly came. the bus drove to where John was going and stopped. John got out of the bus slowly and walked a short distance to the front of a building, Eric Vegetative Nursing Center. At this moment, John's nose went sore, and his eyes were a bit moist too. He didn't stop there for too long and quickly walked into the nursing center. In an independent ward where the bed was leaning against the window and basking in the sunlight, John looked through the window at the sleeping beauty in the room. It was Alice, his girlfriend who had pushed him away 3 years ago. John pursed his lips and didn't dare to approach. When he walked into the ward, he wanted to reach out and touch his girlfriend's cheek, but his hand trembled uncontrollably, and tears kept dripping down his face. He picked up his unconscious girlfriend, hugged her into his arms, and gently kissed Alice's cheek. He looked at his girlfriend in his arms with eyes full of love. He said softly, "Alice, why are you so silly? Why did you push me away? Although I survived, I'm in so much pain. I miss you. Don't worry, dear. Now that I'm back, I'll make sure the murderer pays for this. I'll kill whoever dares to stop me. No one can stop my revenge." Just like that, he hugged her for a very long time. He finally let go of Alice, got up, thanked the nurse who was taking care of Alice, and reluctantly left the ward. The moment he stepped out of the nursing center, John paused. Just now, in his vision, a search frame that only he could see and similar to the Google search bar, suddenly appeared out of thin air. He also received some information in his mind. After a long while, John recovered himself and tried typing in the search box. How to achieve a perfect crime and kill Neil, the young master of Eric States Alexander Corporation, without leaving any evidence. Clicked on the confirm button. Different modus operandi appeared before John's eyes. Different processes but the same conclusion, Neil's death. John looked at these different methods and chose the simplest method to achieve his goal. On September 17, 2021, at 4:11 p.m., place a Lincoln tablet pencil of 3.5 cm long, 1 cubic centimeter bottom area, and 2.8 grams on top of the trash can at the intersection of Lewis Street. Following that, a series of accidents would lead to Neil's death. Listen to the full novel at famvetv.info, direct link in the description.